In all fairness and in equal time, I have in fact invited Michael Morrissey and Joseph Driscoll onto the show, and we're in the process of setting up dates right now. That is one of the questions that I'm going to ask them, is why those are stalled and why they have been stalled. So
let me give you another example if I can. Somebody who's serving a prison sentence for a sex offense, when they're coming towards the end of the prison sentence, the district attorney can decide whether to petition that they be held at the end of their sentence, that they continue to be held as a sexually dangerous person. And if the district attorney's office says, yes, we want to try to hold this person as a sexually dangerous person, they get a trial. And it's the question at the trial is, can the district attorney prove beyond a reasonable doubt that this person, if allowed to leave prison, is likely to reoffend again? And is it because of a mental disease or defect? So there's a trial on that. I've done 2 of those trials. I have experience in doing that. I know how to make that decision on sexually dangerous persons. Now, it happens to be that when you have a jury deciding the case, jurors are much more likely to find that a person is sexually dangerous than if you have a judge trying the case. Jerry Leone, the Middlesex District Attorney, years ago, he's finishing up his first term right now, years ago, he said, let's let either side ask for a jury trial. You know, if the sexually dangerous person, alleged sexually dangerous person wants a jury trial, they can have a jury trial. If the DA's office wants to ask for a jury trial, let's let the DA's office ask for a jury trial. Because right now, if the person who's on trial asks for a judge to decide it, that's what they get. So Jerry Leone said years ago, let's let both sides ask for a jury trial. Let's let the community have a voice through the jury. You know, that bill hasn't been passed. One of my opponents, just recently, now that he's running for district attorney, you know, he's a state representative.
Maybe some of these things will get passed while they're sitting there.
Well, now that he's running for district attorney, now he's on board. Now he's asking for Jerry Leone's bill to become law. Yeah. But where have you been? Right. Where have you been? Why haven't these bills been passed? The DAs can ask for these things. The DAs are the experts on what they need, but they need legislators to listen. Yeah. There's a lot of defense lawyers in the legislature. They're not always receptive to what the DAs are calling for.
Yeah.
And there was the example during Jessica's law.
Especially if they're still in private practice.
Well, one of the legislators, I think we all remember, gave a speech against Jessica's law, talking about how he's going to have to tear apart the child victim who's on the stand. If Jessica's law exists, he's going to have to tear that child apart. He's going to have to give her nightmares, make her vomit. It was a reprehensible speech, and it just wasn't true. It's just not true that defense lawyers are going to do a more effective job under Jessica's law crimes than they do for other serious crimes. They have a duty to do a good job for their client on all crimes. And you know, as a prosecutor in 2009, I proved that you can convict somebody under Jessica's law without what he predicted happening to the child. On my website, there's letters that I've posted, I've received from victims.
There are.
The child, the 10-year-old who went into courtroom and testified, she wrote a letter. What he predicted would happen to victims wasn't true.
We have your website up on the screen right now, so our viewers can take a look at it.
Well, you know, I think it's,
and
you know, whether you support me or not.
There's a section on there from letters from victims thanking you for what work you had done.
And I'd urge people to read those because they're very compelling letters. Whether you support me or my opponents, it doesn't matter. There needs to be recognition of what victims go through. And those letters, they give you an idea of what the victims who are thrust into the criminal justice system face and what the difference an experienced prosecutor can make.
One of the things that I'm sure takes up a great deal of time in the DA's office and in prosecution is driving under the influence, drug and alcohol offenses. What's your general take on that and the extent of the time that it takes in the DA's offices? And I don't know, you could use Middlesex as an example, but where should we be going with these treatment programs, alternatives to jail time? What's your feelings on drug and alcohol use and abuse? And
operating under the influence is a good example. Operating under the influence, first offense, it's the law that you are presumed to get a sentence that will not involve any incarceration, that you will have to attend treatment or counseling or education about avoiding that in the future. For a lot of first-time offenders, though, yes? Oh, you definitely lose your license, absolutely. You lose your license, that's a mandatory, you got to lose your license. But it's also mandatory, you have to go to this treatment program. For a lot of first offenders, that is a wake-up call. I've got a good friend, I call her my dog park friend because we walk our dogs together at the park near my house in Milton. She revealed to me fairly recently that that happened to her. She made a mistake. She was driving after she had been drinking. It was incredibly embarrassing for her. She did that treatment program, and it worked. You know, that is an experience she never wants to repeat, and she just does not touch a car key after she's been drinking any amount of alcohol now. But for some people, that doesn't work, and they're repeat offenders. They need to be treated very differently. And the law right now does have escalating sentences. How good are we at keeping to that? Well, they're minimum mandatory for the escalated sentences. If you are a third or fourth or fifth time offender, you've got to do minimum mandatory sentences. You know, those are cases I have prosecuted. District court, it's very common for district court prosecutors to deal with OUIs, first offense, maybe second offense. When you get up to fourth or fifth or more, those are cases that need to be indicted. Those are cases I have indicted and tried. You know, sometimes the difficulty is proving the prior conviction, as it sounds amazing that that is something that should be hard. But if it was 10 years ago and, you know, you got to find a witness to be able to say this is the same person. So I've dealt with that. So not all drunk driving cases can be lumped together. For first-time offenders, people make mistakes. They need to be treated differently than the repeat offenders. Second and third, I might be getting there. Third, you're definitely there. Look at third offense, you need to go, you need to be incarcerated. You need a taste of that. Is it mandatory, it's mandatory incarceration, is it also mandatory treatment as well? For the low-level offenders, for the ones who are on fourth or fifth, you know, that's going to be up to the judge as part of the sentence. They're going to have to go to prison if they've done it that many times. Many of those programs are getting cut in the budget too, aren't they? The budget cuts are happening everywhere, except for, as I said, the public defenders. But you mentioned before drug cases. You know, I have a different take on drug cases than some other people. Give us your take on those. That's it. I think we incarcerate too many drug offenders. I think we all know people who have substance abuse problems that have overcome it. We either know them or we've heard about them. That a lot of drug offenders are drug offenders because they have drug problems. They're users or addicts. We don't have minimum mandatory prison sentences for forcible child rapists right now. We don't have that. But for a lot of drug offenses, we do. It's part of the war on drugs. Remember the war on drugs that began 20 years ago or more? So the legislatures passed all these mandatory minimum drug offenses. If you commit some drug offenses, you've got to go to prison for 5 years. If you commit a school zone, you've got to go to jail for 2 years. I think a lot of those drug offenders, first-time drug offenders I'm talking about, who get snared in a crime that has a minimum mandatory, they don't need incarceration, they need treatment. I think the district attorney has to be willing to look at those cases and say, we're going to break it down. We're not going to go forward on the school zone, where if you're convicted of the school zone, you have to go to jail for 2 years. It's a minimum mandatory. And there's a lot of kids in their late teens who are getting involved with drugs. Drugs are bad, don't get me wrong. But I don't think incarcerating that person is the way you deal with the problem.